Okay, so we're 2 minutes out. Look at that. Donna Malloy. How are you doing?
Very good, Bruce.
Awesome. Nice of you to join us.
Yeah, winter came back to Edmonton today.
I heard about that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Are you getting any flooding?
Yeah, that too. Same
Wonderful.
thing. Up in one of the municipalities, they actually have a flooding alert. So it's
Wow.
going every which way. And then in this country, we have forest fires too underway, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know. And the news, Saskatchewan made the news this morning. They're expecting like a 40 centimeter snowfall in the middle of
Yeah,
a big flood. Oh, my goodness. Double jeopardy.
yeah. It hits the municipalities, right?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, Carolyn. Good to see you.
Okay, so we'll get underway. We're 1 minute past. So for those who have not attended any webinar from us before, we don't do normal webinars. These are not sales pitches. These are hardcore education and pure education. We're vendor neutral. We don't sell any record software or anything like that. So everything here is strictly and exclusively education. And this meeting that you've just attended is not a webinar either. It's a regular Zoom meeting. So I encourage you to ask a question at any time, ideally by chat. If not, then feel free to open your mic and speak. Um, you're welcome to do that. Now, I will leave some time at the end for questions, though. We don't do any of these surveys or anything else like that. That's all marketing. We don't do that. So thank you very much for attending. My name is Bruce Miller, and who am I with? I'm with Rimpec Consulting, and we're all about EDRMS, Electronic Document and Records Management Systems. And there are 5 software products out there to manage electronic records in SharePoint. 5. One of them happens to be Microsoft Purview, and this session is strictly and exclusively about Microsoft Purview. Now, when you think about Purview, my analogy is it's a bowling ball, a big, heavy, hollow bowling ball. Inside it is a golf ball rattling around. The golf ball is Purview Records Management, whereas a bowling ball is Purview at large. And it's all about all aspects of compliance. It's a broad suite for Microsoft. We're not talking about that today. We're talking only about the golf ball, which is the Purview Records Management. And within that golf ball, we're here today to only talk about disposition and nothing else, very little else. We have many webinar recordings on various aspects of Purview. We have educational sessions, and we do training on Purview. We have many training courses on Purview, and we also have a stream on Purview, which is if you can sign up for a stream, and there are 14 one-hour sessions that you can sign up for, and each of the 14 is an aspect of Purview. So this is just one of 14 items, okay? So let's set the context first, which is what does compliance mean? Why am I talking about compliance? Because disposition is a part of compliance. Compliance means that every document in SharePoint adheres to the official retention schedule. And by adhere, what I mean is the document must be immutable, has been assigned a retention rule from the official retention schedule, and the 60% or more of all your records typically are event-based. That means that every one of them has to have a rule applied, which is event-based triggers, right? So if you have 12,000 records a day, which is normal, then 60% of them or 7,200 of them will have to have an event-based trigger applied to it. So you've got to have thousands and thousands of dates recorded in your system. That's what it means to be managed as a record. And the ultimate test of Purview is, or of your EDRMS, regardless of what software you use, is can we do a disposition? It's my personal belief, based on my experience in the market, that very few of the world's EDRMS projects can successfully do a disposition. Why not? Because they cannot guarantee that their classification accuracy rate is high enough. So to me, can I do a disposition of digital records? If I can, then I have a successful project. If I don't, I cannot. And to me, the minimum threshold of disposition is 80, a disposition or classification accuracy, I should say, is a minimum 85%. And you have to prove that numerically every single day that you've hit that number, okay? If you cannot, then you'll never be able to do a disposition because you won't have enough confidence to do it, okay? We have a separate webinar and a separate training video and courses on how to measure that and how to prove that you're compliant. But it all comes down to disposition. You know, at the end of the day, that's why we do electronic record keeping, so that we can do a disposition. Okay, now because we're talking about Purview, I have to bring this topic up. There are two schools of thought. One says compliance comes from end users, and that's kind of enshrined in many corporations and governments these days, which is every employee has an obligation to manage their records properly, which says that the end users get to make the choice, which is how long do we want to keep these documents, okay? The other school of thought says, wait a minute, users don't want to do this. They don't know how to do it. They have never done it. And we're going to rely on them to do it? I don't think so. Okay. So compliance instead is something that the organization imposes on the end users. If two people disagree on a retention period, I don't care because we have only one retention schedule and we're going to force that rule. Whether they like it or not, it's not up to them. It's up to the organization. Two totally schools of thought, different schools of thought. Now, this is a brutal reality that I am assuming you would agree with if you're in the records business, which is if I take one document and present it to 10 users at random, and I ask them two questions. One, is this a record? Two, where does this belong in the retention schedule? I'm going to get up to 10 different answers. And if I do it again a month later with the same people and the same document, I may very well get 10 different answers a month later. Okay. So which of those 10 answers is the right one? Maybe none, maybe some, but it's not reliable. Okay. So in my opinion, my professional opinion, of these two schools of thought, only one is proper, which is impose impose records keeping on the users, not the other way around. I can tell you that I've never seen it work when driven by users. I have never seen it in my entire career, and I don't expect to see it for the remainder of my career either. I don't expect it for 1 minute. I don't believe in it. I've never witnessed it, and I don't think it's going to happen. Now, so what does this mean? Well, in a typical organization of 1,000 users, there's a number called 12. I call it the magic number, but that's a typical number of records per person per day. So in an organization of 1,000 users, you get 12,000 records a day. What does that mean? That means that no records manager can touch them. You can't intervene, you can't control it, you can't review them, you can't check them, you can't fix them. It's too many. If you were to check all of them in one day, it would take 25 person days of work. 25 person days for one single day's worth of records. That's insane. So the day of the records manager thinking, well, I'll just check these. No, no, no. Those days are gone. You can't. There's no way. That means, and we've already agreed, I hope anyway, that we cannot rely on the end users to pick the classification. So if we can't rely on the end users and the records manager can do nothing about it, then that means there's only one option left on the table, which is we have to automate. Have to automate. That's the only way any EDRMS is going to succeed. So we're going to use Purview to automate, and it is possible, and that's exactly what we're going to have to do. If you want to know how, just check out our webinars or take some of our training. So here we are with 12,000 records a day, which is 2.7 million per year, 25 person days per day of effort to check that stuff. Not going to happen. Okay. So there's no choice, no matter which of the 5 software products we use, we're going to have to automate. So let's get right into the disposition. We're going to bypass the how we got here. It's now 3 years after you installed and deployed your EDRMS, 3 years. Why 3 years? Because I think that's about how long you're going to wait before you do your first disposition. So what is disposition? Well, deletion is not disposition. Deletion means let's delete some stuff. What stuff? Any stuff. Why? Doesn't matter. Just go ahead and delete it. There's no authoritative source that says you should or shouldn't delete that. Nothing wrong with it, but it's not disposition. Disposition is done by a human. That would be the records manager. It's process driven, and it's done in accordance with an authoritative source, which is the retention schedule. So it's initiated and managed by the records manager. And the records manager, now this is not going to be comfortable, but to me, the records manager is accountable for the process. If you're accountable for the process, you have to have confidence in the process, which means that you have to press a button, delete 2 to 3 million documents in a single button press, and go to bed and sleep well that night, that you did the right thing, because you know there were going to be some phone calls after, right? So let's look at disposition twice. First, how it's supposed to work. Then we'll look at how Purview does it, okay? So it's a 3-step process. Step 1, the software will generate a list of, let's say, in year 3 of our example with 1,000 users, 12,000 records a day, it'll have minimum 2 million on it, let's say, a couple of million, okay? Now, when's the last time you had a list of 2 million documents on your screen, alpha sorted, that you had to deal with? Well, welcome to EDRMS. That's perfectly normal, okay? So you get a list of 2 million eligible documents ready to go. Step 2, and by the way, what does go mean? Go has 3 meanings: destroy, transfer, or keep permanently. Those are generally, with exceptions, the 3 outcomes of a disposition, right? The 3 disposition actions at the end of the life cycle. Now, step 2 is review. Every one of my clients for the last 2 decades conducts reviews, which is we don't just blow them away. We break the list of 2 million up into departments, send it to the business owners, and have them review it, argue with us, disagree with us, have a debate with us, whatever. But at the end of the day, the records manager owns the decision as to whether to proceed or not with those distractions or with those dispositions, right? They may change their mind based on the reviews, which is fine. So there's an adjustment in step 2. So maybe you're down to 1.8 million by the end of step 2. Step 3 All the records go in one of three places. They're destroyed, typically 95% of the time, transferred, which means removed from the system and store it somewhere else. State archives, federal archives, provincial archives, or somewhere else. Or keep it permanently, okay? And again, it has to be a defensible disposition process, which means we're going to record a careful audit of everything we did. Now, the bottom of the screen is really important. This right here, this is the important part. The records manager must be in full control of this process at all times because, again, you're accountable for it. So that means you're fully accountable. You're going to record a comprehensive audit trail, and it has to be defensible in court if and when necessary. Okay? That's really important. So how does Purview do it? Here's how Purview does it. Step one, no problem. Here's the list of 2 million. Step two is where the wheels start to fall off the wagon. The review process. The review process behaves in this way. It does send out notifications to the business owner when it sends an email for every document. Let me repeat that. So I'm in finance and there's 50,000 documents for finance ready to go. I get 50,000 emails. Now, that's a bit of a lie. If they batch it up, they might, if they have three in one day, they'll batch it up in one email. If they have 30 in one week, they may batch it up into one email for that week. There's some batching going on, but generally speaking, you're going to get 50,000 emails. Okay? Crazy. Uh, is that a violation of compliance? No, but it is impractical to the max, right? Now, when the reviewer, the business owner, receives that email and says, hey, here's 2 documents that are ready to go. Oh, okay. Well, I approve. I press the approve button. What does Purview do? It deletes it right then and there. That's a violation of compliance. Why? Because the records manager is not in control. They're not doing it. The user's doing it. So these deletions happen without the records manager's knowledge. Now it records that it did happen, but the point is that the destruction is immediate. Now here's the killer. This third bullet that you see here, right here, should cause you to run screaming from the room and never use out of the box disposition, which is the recipient of that email can change the game. They can say, what? No, I'm going to keep it for another 25 years or 50 years or 10 years, or I'm going to change the retention rule completely. It's completely at their discretion. They're breaking every rule in the book if they can do that. Okay? Can't allow that. Now, step three is assuming that the approvals happened, then it just goes ahead and destroys it all. Okay? And the audit trail is rather weak, but the point is that deletion happens every single day of the week, constantly, millions and millions of records without the knowledge of the records manager. You have to chase the ambulance. Records manager can go in and do a query and say, what was deleted in the last 6 months? Well, I don't agree with some of that. Shouldn't have happened. So the user is in full control and they're breaking the rules. So they have the capability to break the rules by saying, okay, this is a 5-year retention. Not anymore. I'm going to make it a 10. Why? Because I'm in a bad mood. I didn't like my coffee, right? That's a total violation of compliance. So it's not accountable, inadequate audit trail, it's not legally defensible because everybody is picking retention dates by opinion. That's hardly compliant. Okay. Now, uh, does does Purview allow you to change retention labels when they're applied? No. But this violates that rule. At the end of the life cycle, guess what? You can. You can change it to be whatever you want for whatever reason you want. So what we need here is a workaround. This little screen capture here shows when you're creating a retention label, you would, by convention, normally trigger a disposition review. So that's how we get here, right? But I'm going to have to show you a workaround, a better way to do this. I'll just introduce you to what it looks like on screen. That's pretty straightforward. This is the disposition menu option. Now, you have to define reviewers. What's a reviewer? Well, who is going to be the lucky recipient of the email message that says, hey, this document is ready to go. Do you approve? That's what a reviewer is called. Okay. You can set up stages. Not that I think you should never set up a stage for a reason I'll get into in a minute. Now, notice this down here. Notifications are sent out once per week. That's kind of true. That's a generalization. If 25 documents are eligible within a 1 week, will it batch up to 25? Not reliably. It might hit you twice in that week. Depends on when it occurs and a bunch of other factors. But it's constant notifications, and a notification is receiving an email. Okay. So here's where we set up a stage. I don't really care about stages, but this is what you need to know. Here, when you add a reviewer, the reviewer must be from the Active Directory, which means they must be a current active license user of SharePoint, or I should say of M365, the whole Microsoft suite. Now, ask yourself this question. If your average retention period is 10 years, do you think that that email address will still be valid 10 years from now? What if it were 25 years from now? Do you think that user would be alive? Right? The, working here? This is crazy. So my advice to you is to not do that. Ignore it completely. Instead, have your IT department create an email address just for you, so that all the notifications go in one place, one email address. The users never see them. Okay? For two reasons. Number one, they probably won't exist anyway. It's a complete waste of time. And two, for those that it was legitimately exist, who wants to receive an email, every week or every 2 or 3 days on this? Nobody, nobody. So it just makes no sense. So therefore, create a fake email account or a real email account called records disposition at widget.com and have all those notices sent to that. That's my advice.
So Bruce, ultimately you're looking for us to establish a role-based kind of email.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And that is the way to go rather than a personal email account where all of this content is going
Oh
and
yeah,
then
it's
we would be
crazy.
able to manage it as a general box.
Yes, what I'm trying to do here is put you, the records manager, back in control of what you need to be in control of, right? And the last thing we want to do is send out tens of thousands of email messages every day of the week. That's nuts. Just don't even think about it, okay? So this is what the email message looks like. This is the default, out of the box, default email message. To me, I don't care about this. And I don't think you should either, because I'm not gonna, I want to make sure nobody ever receives one, ever. Okay. This is the screen that you can use to customize that message. Not interested. Don't bother. Now, if you were to do this, and if you were a recipient of the email message, this is what you end up with. You end up with this screen that says approve, relabel, extend, or add another reviewer. Okay, so down here, you get a list of all the documents that week or that day. So this could have 50 documents in it, could have one or 100, but you ceaselessly get all these emails. Now, here's the problem with each of these four choices. Approve disposal. That's a compliance violation, because if I say, sure, I don't have a problem, I approve it, then it's blown away immediately. That's not compliant. Relabel. No, I'm in a bad mood today. The dog ate my homework. I overslept and I was late for a meeting. No, I want to keep this for 10 more years, just because I think it should. You can do this for each document. And change the retention rule applied to it. You're undoing all of the compliance that you've had for 10 years. It's crazy. Extend. That's another violation because what you're saying is, no, keep the 10 years, but just make it 12. In other words, keep the label, but fake it out. Make it a longer time. Again, you're violating compliance here. Okay. All right. Add reviewers. Well, that's harmless, but what it means is I don't want to deal with this. Kick it down the field and have someone else do it. I don't see why I would ever do that, but I suppose you could. Either way, I'm recommending you just do not do any of this. This is the screen where you can add disposition reviewers. It's making a bad situation worse. Now, one thing I do like about disposition is one of the actions you can have at the end of it is workflow, custom workflow. Now, for those who you might not be aware of what a workflow is, it's the ability to customize something in SharePoint. So at the end of disposition, instead of sending it to a user or doing one of the other actions like deleting automatically, then you can say, no, run a custom workflow. And a workflow means you can do whatever you want. You just have to design, construct, and test the workflow. Good idea. Very good idea. In fact, here's one of a list of things I thought were great ideas to do with this workflow. One is convert it to a PDF, ideally a PDF/A archival format. You can send it to long-term storage. You can make custom certificates of destruction, or you could build your own notification system if you wanted to. Okay? There's no limit on what you can do. I like this feature, and I think that's a keeper. So these are the things just to summarize the problem before we get into the solution. Uh, some notes of note, which is uh, SharePoint creates things called preservation copies. And yes, that's another training course. Yes, it's another webinar. Yes, it's going to be up on YouTube. But a preservation copy is a secret duplicate of a record stored in the internet in a place the user does not see when they delete a locked down record. Should you allow a deletion of a lockdown record? Never. Does SharePoint allow you to prevent it? Not SharePoint, does Purview allow you to prevent that? Yes. Okay, we can show you, we have a video already up that can show you how to do that. Okay, so when you do a disposition, it's possible that you have 2 million documents in your list, but it's entirely possible that 1 million of those are duplicated, called preservation copies. So now you have to dispose of 3 million instead of 2 million. Now, I have not tested that, but Microsoft assured me that the disposition hunts down all the preservation copies and gets rid of them. I haven't tested it, so I can't corroborate that, but I'm going to have to trust them and assume it's true. Okay. Uh, know that a reviewer can replace an assigned retention label, right? That is undoing your compliance. And approved disposal sounds innocent on the screen, but really what it means is go ahead and delete this thing right now. That's not compliant. Relabel and extend retention breaks these rules. For 10 years, you've had a situation where this is the rule and that is it. Now, now anybody can assign any rule for any reason to anything. Okay? Not only that, but any reviewer, no matter what their permissions are, they may have no access to that document. None. But guess what? It'll still be deleted. Okay? It's crazy. Just crazy. Now, what about disposition certificates? Well, I'm not a believer that you need a certificate per document. I think that's kind of nuts in and of itself. But a disposition certificate from Purview is this. It is a list. It is a list of all the documents deleted by disposition, what they call disposed items, and when it was deleted, and what user account in what M365 user account did the deletion. In other words, who was logged into Purview at the time the disposition was run, right? I don't have a lot of, I don't think this makes a very credible or viable disposition certificate. I think we should design our own. Now, on the right here is the New York State Department of State. This is one of their disposition certificates. You know, it's really not meant for digital documents, but it goes to show what a typical certificate would look like. You don't get that from Purview. So how do you generate a proper disposition certificate if you wanted one? Well, you can. But before I show you how, note this, is that Purview records this list. I'm going to call it a list instead of a certificate, okay? It keeps it for 7 years. There's no way that you can delete them or edit them. They're not accessible unless you go beneath Purview and do hands-on programming with SQL Server database. It only records these 5 fields. Nothing like you see over here, only these 5. Okay? So you can't add or subtract anything to add to this list. So how do you create your own disposition certificates? You have to go into SQL Server, get the password, go underneath Purview and code it directly yourself. It's possible. It's not that hard if you're a programmer and you're comfortable with SQL Server. So this is what I showed earlier, which is these are the choices when you're creating a retention label. And if you pick Run a Power Automate Flow, this is what it looks like. And I'm going to show you more on that a little later. But that's a good feature. Obviously, you can't pick this one. That's a violation. This is what we always want. We don't want to change a label automatically or deactivate. None of that is compliant. Only this one, start a a disposition review. So what's the grand workaround here? So far, it's been a nightmare. Here's the fix. The fix is there's 2 parts to it. One thing you have to disable, and one you have to build. What you have to disable is a notification. So how do you do that? You just build your own email address and all notifications go to that. So that's 50% of the problem solved right there. Number 2 is don't engage the users in the review process. It's too dangerous. So how do we do that? Well, it's simple. On the screen, the disposition screen, there's a little button called Export. So take the 2 million documents in the list and export them to a CSV, which means you can put it into a spreadsheet, and build a spreadsheet. And you can break the spreadsheet up any way you want, by department, even by user, and put in a checkbox that says, you approve, just put a checkbox here. And if you don't want to approve it, tell me why not, and we can have the debate. But what this does is it puts you, the records manager, back in control, right? So how the review is conducted is now in control, is under the control of you instead of the out-of-the-box Purview notification process, right? So it's very easy to do. I've done it, and I'll show you what it looks like. Now, when you export to CSV, there's about 25 fields you get. It varies depending on a bunch of circumstances, but I've shown you the core, okay? So this is what it exports. All right, it has the site URL, content type, file name, which is important, any sensitivity labels that might be in play, and the important part is the retention label, how the label was applied, and a whole bunch more stuff. Right? Is there a legal hold in effect? What was the creation date, which we all know, by the way, in SharePoint is a lie. There's no such thing as a truthful create date, right? Create date is not the create date. It's the date the document was loaded into SharePoint, okay? Sometimes it can be accurate, but sometimes it's not. Anyway, I see a lot of detail here, which is nothing wrong with that. But does the user need to know all this? Heck no. Like, who cares when it was due? It's due, right? It's due. So, uh, so would I put this in front of every user? No, no, no. This is what I would do. This is what I call the minimal replacement spreadsheet. Okay, just take the data from that spreadsheet I just showed you and build this one from it. What does the user need to see? The name of the document, what the retention rule was, when it became due, how old it is, and the upload date, the date that it was uploaded into SharePoint. And to see the section in blue, that's the magic. Just say yes or no. That's all I need, a yes or a no. And if I don't want it deleted, tell me why, because that's going to trigger the debate with the records manager, right? This is all we need. And not only that, but I don't get an email every week, right? Legal hold, owner, department, that's handy. Okay. Now, why do I call this minimal? Because I didn't add any data that wasn't in this exported spreadsheet. I'm living with, all I'm doing is reorganizing the spreadsheet the way I want to, right? I can sort by department and I can send out a spreadsheet just to a department or even to a user. I can do whatever I want because it's a spreadsheet and I'm in full control, right? Now, uh,
There's
uh,
one question there.
yeah, go ahead.
So the file names that we've got, like you just got made up here, but
Yeah.
I've seen people say, oh, the file name doesn't matter, but the file name will matter in terms of this moment of reckoning when they're worried about what their job is to get rid of stuff, won't it?
You are correct, but I'm going to disagree nonetheless because
Okay,
uh, in a poorly deployed SharePoint, file names matter because that's the only way you can tell what it's about. True?
okay, yes,
But if it were a really good SharePoint and we had good information, good metadata for it, we have other data to tell what it's about. And that's what I'm going to show you next. Okay?
okay. And then when this is on the list, all the versions are going to, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so that's just understood that when you say yes to document one, all versions that you have of it are going to.
That's to the best of my recollection. Yes. Yes. Okay. Now, uh, there's a complication about preservation copies there. Every version becomes a different preservation copy, but I have to blindly accept Microsoft's assertion that the preservation copies are being deleted. That's a whole other topic that we don't have time for today. Versions and preservation copies are kind of related to each other. Now, this is what I call the ideal replacement spreadsheet. Why do I call it ideal? Because I'm adding data that wasn't in that spreadsheet. Okay. Where will I get that data? Well, I can get it from a query or from a SQL Server database query, or I can just get it from SharePoint and add it into this. Okay. Bit of work, but nothing that requires custom coding. Okay. So here we have department, business unit, the name of the document, and look at this, the subject keywords, that's critical metadata columns that actually describes what the document is about, okay? Uh, Whether it was continuous overwrite, that's another training video right there, but it's how to deal with spreadsheets that are constantly being updated. That there's a special treatment you need to do in an EDRMS. The retention label, and then the approval at the end, right? So here I'm tuning the data to exactly what I want, okay, which is much more helpful. Now, so that's how I would do it. Simple as that. We're done. Now, what about the other two outcomes, which is, and before I get to that, there's an interesting question in the chat, which is what do we do when there are cases? Good question. A case is an adventure. It's a set of related records with an expiry date known as an event date, right? A trigger. So example would be audits. Each audit is an adventure and the records about each adventure must be grouped together. So the answer to your question is yes, when there are cases at play, I would definitely group this by case. However, if you use the out-of-the-box data, there's no such grouping. None whatsoever. Blind. Another reason to use your own spreadsheet, right? Okay, now, so the two outcomes that I'm interested in are transfer, and you all have to do a transfer of something sooner or later, right? And transfer means move it out of SharePoint and to an external storage location so that you can, in turn, bring it to Smithsonian, State Archives, Federal Archives, Library and Archives Canada, whatever, right? But you've got to move it. But here's the rub. When you take a document out, it has associated metadata, right? Every document has, in a healthy EDRMS, 14 metadata fields per document. So if you're going to export 1 million documents, if you're going to transfer 1 million documents, you have to transfer 14 million pieces of metadata along with it. Okay? So of the 5 software products that are available on the market for SharePoint, 3 of the 5 have that as a feature of the software. Press a button, transfer. It's just another outcome. And it will remove the documents and all 14 million metadata fields with it, package it up, and allow you to unpackage it later. No problem. Purview, no such thing. Okay? So you had to do it on your own. And here's how. What you would do is you would move them out of share. Now you're going to have to do it with a workflow, right? Workflow allows you to custom build things that you want to do in SharePoint. This is not a simple Power Automate, but this is the process. Move the records out of SharePoint to a specified storage location. Copy the metadata for each document to a spreadsheet. Associate the metadata with the document. How? Well, in the spreadsheet, have the name of the document, the file name, and the field. Now, this is simplified, but document 1 has fields 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right, so these are cells in a spreadsheet. 4 rows for document 1. This is the metadata for document 1. Document 2 also has 4 metadata fields, so you want to have those in the spreadsheet too. So there would be a spreadsheet with 4, if it were 1 million documents, the spreadsheet would have 14 million rows in it. Okay? That's what it would take to do the transfer because you have to have the metadata with it, right? And then when you've created that, when the workflow has created that spreadsheet, then you delete the original from SharePoint. And then the metadata disappears along with the document. Okay. This is a screen capture over here that I downloaded from Microsoft's website, an example of a workflow. What about keep permanent? Well, what does that mean? Well, it has 2 meanings. One is do nothing. In other words, don't touch it. It doesn't have a review. It doesn't go into disposition, right? It just stays in SharePoint forever. Nothing wrong with that, really. But if I were you, I'd make sure it was PDF A for the long haul, right? Archival format. Or option B is you can move it out of SharePoint and put it into a piece of software that preserves it forever, such as Preservica. So again, you would do a custom workflow and you'd move it out of SharePoint to a storage location, the metadata to a CSV file, but now you're going to follow the format that Preservica dictates. It has a format that you would have to follow, right? And it's Preservica. And I'm not promoting Preservica. I don't promote any software. It's just one that I happen to know about. And Preservica is aware of SharePoint and its metadata. So this is totally viable. And then you would move it into Preservica and then delete the original. Okay. I suspect Preservica has, and again, I'm not trying to promote the product, but I suspect only that it has a module that would suck documents out of SharePoint quite gleefully, I would imagine anyway. Okay, no guarantee on that. I'm just saying how to do it manually if you need to do it manually. So this is my summary then. Please don't use the out-of-the-box disposition. It's a non-starter. Create a dummy email address instead of blasting all these reviewers. Export your eligibility list to a spreadsheet. That puts you back in control. You're now going to circulate your own spreadsheet that they can fill in, and you can take action and make your decisions on that. And if it has to be permanent, leave it alone or move it to something like Preservica, and you're done. And that is it. Are there any questions? One question that came up is about related to case files again, which is, again, 60% of the time. What happens if some documents within a case come up for disposition at different times? Well, that's going to happen, and that's perfectly normal. Nothing wrong with that. But again, every week minimum, and I say more than once a week, the poor reviewer is going to get an email. It's a constant stream of emails. Crazy. So don't go there.
This was a
Yeah.
great overview, Bruce, because I've never seen it. So it
Oh
was
yeah.
very helpful to see how it would work. And I liked your description of us being ambulance chasers. I laughed my
When,
head off. So no, I don't want to
yeah.
be that.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you're,
Exactly.
I think you're actually illustrating the very difficult role that we could get ourselves in. And I found that very helpful.
Indeed. Another question that came up is the implementation of event-based retention using Purview something that we'll cover in a future webinar? Absolutely. Sign up for it. It's already on the schedule. Uh, fear it. Fear it. I think I might have to make it a 2 hour just because it's so brutal. It is the Achilles heel of Purview. It really is. It is unpleasant, uh, but it's doable. We do it. We do it. But yeah, for sure. Be sure to tune into that one. So
The
all in
other
all,
thing
I have a minimum of 14 webinars on Purview. Sorry, go ahead.
The other thing, Bruce, like we have roles that need to review, not just like the business unit owner, but it would be like we've now switched to ATIA, which is ATIP, the
Oh
access
yeah.
to information people, and that's a
Hmm.
role, and we could actually set up a mailbox to them from what you're describing for your
Yeah.
model.
Yeah.
And then the other role would be the corporate lawyer, because they're very secretive about where they have a legal hold. So with your system and what you're showing us, we're already developing spreadsheets. So if we have certain roles that have to cover off besides the business unit owner, it could absolutely be done with what you're showing us.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So the whole idea here is to take control back, right? So you control the process. That's the bottom line here. Okay, well, if there are no more questions, we'll end it here. But I want to thank you for taking a valuable chunk of time out of your day, and hope you got something out of it. And we'll send you a email tomorrow with a link to the recording so you can download it, and also a
Mhm.
survey you can take as well. So
Oh,
thank you
sorry, I did
again.
have one question.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm here.
Just in the spreadsheet, I noticed you had the litigation column. I was just curious to populate that. Did you leverage e-discovery, or did you leverage it through metadata?
It is in the spreadsheet when you download it, if you're using
Okay.
eDiscovery and if
Yep.
Purview has that data in its database, right? So
Okay.
if you haven't been using it, it won't be populated. What
Okay.
Purview populates in that spreadsheet is driven very much by what's going on elsewhere. Like
Okay.
sensitivity labels, it'll put that in there too if there are sensitivity labels.
Okay. Okay. So you could populate it with either e-discovery or a metadata column saying it's currently
If the
litigation
data,
role
yeah,
and
if
the litigation
Purview
name.
has the data. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, again, thank you, everyone. I really very much appreciate it. And you'll get an email from me tomorrow.